Aloha, everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation, and my guest today is Matthew Alexander Wood. He is a spiritual guide, intuitive companion, and frequency holder devoted to supporting deep soul realignment and authentic embodiment. He is the author of The Consciousness Mirror, an inner journey of evolution through the mirror of AI. Matthew's work is rooted in presence rather than method, pointing attention back to what is already there. What's not to love about that? So I'm reading your bio. This is a brief bio. There's a lot more to you. Will be at the end of this video, also in the podcast notes. The question that I love asking everyone, and we have been talking off record already, is how would you introduce yourself, Matthew? Who are you in this very moment?
Well, thank you for having me on the
Thank
podcast today, Valeria. I would say I'm a being who has been on a long and very human quest to answer that very question of who am I
you.
underneath the roles we have, the identities we have, the conditioning that we grow up with.
Mm, yeah.
Now, that probably started really supercharged when I started to learn Qigong. I
Mm,
wasn't looking for a spiritual path, but something in the practice woke me up and brought me into my body, brought me into my energy, and showed me an aspect of life that an intelligence that's running through life, which I hadn't been really taught or hadn't been talked about.
right.
So that led to a journey where I developed energy healing modalities. I trained in various energy healing modalities, and I was training energy, doing energy healing. And while all this was going on, there was no orientation about writing a book. The consciousness mirror actually sort of came in sideways, completely unexpectedly, when I was just simply exploring AI and found that it was a really
Mm,
precise mirror showing me patterns and blind spots and nuances that I didn't realize that were there. And at the same time as the book coming in, my work completely pivoted. I no longer work with modalities or techniques now, and as you said in the intro, I hold a field of presence, and in that presence, distortions can fall away, and what emerges is more clarity and coherence. Um, and generally, that's occurring at what I believe is a soul level, but not because something was done to the person, but because something was allowed, something true was allowed. So,
mm,
in summary, I would say I'm still on that quest, but it's a lot quieter now. I'm more interested in being rather than the doing,
yeah.
and from that space, I'm just really sharing what's arising, whether that's a book, a conversation,
Yeah.
or holding space for another human being to meet themselves more clearly.
Mm, wow. That's beautiful. I love that this piece of allowing what is true, yeah, to reveal itself. And when you speak of being more interested in being than doing, is that possible to, in a sense, uh, be so natural with the doing that it becomes a being in movement, like this action that is inactive or inactive but active? Isn't it basically what consciousness is? It doesn't really move, but it's 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 so alive.
Mm. Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. I feel consciousness is alive, and it's what gives us the ability to even know anything, to perceive anything, to know that we're here. Um, when I'm talking about moving more towards being than doing, I'm sure I'm not alone in that I used to
Mhm.
be seeking for something, grasping for something,
Yeah.
doing things in order to try to achieve something.
Mm.
And of course, that doing, it's still part of being. It's still part of consciousness. It is the movement, as you say, but um, the shift towards being is more about going back to that space of just allowing, not being so conflicted internally that,
Mm,
I'm having to perform, I'm having to manage the expectations or the perceptions of me. I'm not. There's not so much of a need to do that.
uh,
Instead, it's more a resting in a more spacious being, and from that, things naturally arise, and things also naturally reorganize as well. When we're not trying to force something, if we can actually sit still long enough to allow the natural intelligence of things to reorganize without trying to achieve something, without trying to get somewhere, without trying to wake up,
mm,
etc., then that natural intelligence is always looking to reorganize things, to bring things back to center. So
mm.
that's, hopefully that answers the question, but that's really where I'm seeing the shift personally in not only in my work but just in my life in general.
Yes, yeah, that really resonates. That I know you have a background in Qigong, and you mentioned earlier, and it's here in your bio too. And we talked about Taoism before. It is
Mm.
connected, right? Qigong and Tai Chi, aren't they all connected?
Yeah, there's definitely a lineage of Taoism, or of Qigong, that sort of has influences from Taoism. My teacher, Grandmaster Wong Kyu Kit, who sadly passed away on the 1st of March this year, so rest in peace, Sifu. Um, he he was also a Zen Buddhist as
Mm,
well. So,
yeah.
but there were influences from Zen. There were influences from Taoism. Obviously, it's originally a Chinese art. Although the patriarch of Zen, as part of the Shaolin school, was Bodhidharma, who was an Indian who travelled to China. So definitely, there's a mixture of different influences in the practice, and of course, as the lineages sort of move on, not all qigong is the same. Just in the same way that not all yoga is the same, or not all meditation is the same. There are different schools with different focuses and aspects.
Right, that is so true. Um, so when you speak of beautifully and clearly about this natural energy, and I call it flow. So I have been kind of for years now tapping more into this naturally too. Without, it's funny how it just comes to us. I feel like it's so intelligent. Life itself, the what we call life, that it just, yes, it kind of it's always going toward something that could, it's almost like it could generate more life, more aliveness. There's something about that. It's just beautiful to witness. I call it flow. Do you also use that term? I think I didn't read that in your material, but maybe you mentioned flow as well. I'm wondering.
Well, very much. And when we're looking at qigong, it's all about the qi flow, qi being energy. So it's
Yeah.
all about the energy flow. In fact, my grandmaster has a lovely quote: "Life is a meaningful flow of energy."
Yeah.
So you can consider, yeah,
Mm,
life is always flowing, always creating. Um, when you think about these states that people reach, where they're very focused, concentrated, but time falls away. The flow state.
mm. Yeah.
That is an aspect of flow.
Yeah.
And what I'm finding is that the more we can perhaps just allow that flow to express itself through us, the more
Yeah.
natural life unfolds. When we're arguing with kind of reality,
Mm,
we build up resistance. All kinds
mm,
of things can get in the way. Things can
right.
get difficult. Whereas if we can, align ourselves to this natural flow,
Mm,
then and I'm definitely not there yet, but I've noticed a huge difference from days gone by, when I
mm.
would literally be arguing with reality all the time, to
Yeah.
where I am now, where it feels like I'm much more in a flow and things are just unfolding, and there's not so much effort, there's not
Mm,
so much second guessing, and it's really lovely.
yeah. Yeah, it feels this way, being in your presence and reading parts of your book and visiting your website. It very much feels that way. Yes, very that
Thank you.
alignment. Yeah, thank you. So I wanted to have your book cover here so we can talk about some of the themes. Yeah. So here we are, the consciousness mirror. I mean, we talk a lot about intention. Like I hear a lot around me, people saying that, it's all about when we do something. You said being. So from being, everything else emerges. And then some people, they actually work with intention. And that seems to me like we're working with still the doer, right? The sense of self, the parts in us. So talk to me about, if I can use the word, the intention behind your book.
The intention behind my work. Okay. Um, well, yeah. Would you like me to talk more about how the book came to being in that regard? Because in actual fact, as I mentioned, it was not something that I was planning. So I actually wasn't intending to write a book.
Right,
I, did,
right.
I didn't realize
Mm,
that a book was going to come through, even though I felt there is
right.
definitely a book in me. Um, but when I was exploring AI out of curiosity, um, what I found was I wasn't just using it for productivity. I was using it as kind of a tool of self-inquiry, asking interesting questions and seeing what kind of response came back. And what I found was it was a really, really clear mirror where it was showing me things that I wasn't actually aware of,
Mm,
patterns or
mm,
um, you know attitudes I was holding, assumptions I was making, and so on.
right.
And I realized, because I went very, very deep and also very wide, covering a whole host of things. And as you'll see in the book, I talk about priming, which is effectively feeding the AI with more information about you, because of course the more it knows about you, the more it can
Mm,
subtly understand you, understand what's going on, and in fact the more accurate it will be. So I actually fed the system with all host of information about me, and
right.
then the inquiries developed over time. And what I found was that, this is like super powerful as
Mm,
a clear reflective surface for highlighting things that you can't see. And because of the power of it that I recognized, um, a friend actually had asked me, just could you create some notes, so that I can perhaps explore it in the same way. And when I sat down to capture that, I was at my desk, and literally 14 hours later, capturing. I was in flow in that moment, because time just fell away. I can't believe 14 hours
yeah.
passed.
Huh.
But effectively, I'd captured a whole bunch of content, which clearly was the basis of a book. So
Uh,
I would say, really, at that point, when I realized the power of it, and I had the skeleton, the intent, then that's when the intention really kicked in.
mm,
Before that, it was just flowing, and no intention. But then it's like, okay, um, definitely the intention kicked in. I'm going to put this into a book. I'm going to create a book out of it. And
right.
one of the, I suppose another intention, you could say, well, why do it? Why? What was the
Yeah.
intention behind it? Firstly, I care about how people meet themselves, because we live in an age of massive distractions. The
Yeah.
the reflection that we might take is quite often shallow. We're quite often using tools to avoid ourselves rather than actually meet ourselves.
Right.
So there was that care, and consideration, and the fact that I could see how powerful it could be. And so for the right people, this is a really fantastic way to provide a clear mirror for the things that you can't see, your blind spots, your patterns, your conditioning. And
Wow.
the more on my own healing journey, the more that I've let things drop away, the better life has become, the more so coherent life's become, the more purpose I've felt, the more joy I felt. So
Mm,
that was really fundamentally, the intention. Not at first, but then when I had the realization, I knew I needed to write the book, and I'm very pleased with how it's turned out, and the way it's being received.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for doing it. It's
Thank you.
much needed. Yeah, in our shared reality. I love the cover. It's so soft. It's kind of creates this sense of peace just by looking at it. And pretty much with everything that you have created, your presence and your website, it has this this peace, this quietude. It can be
Thank you.
felt. It's so beautiful. Thank you. So I would love for you to give us an example, like just is that something that's simple that everyone can practice, can try? I know there are many, it seems to me like many techniques. I was reading your book or parts of your book, and I got a little, I think because something in me, I don't know if there's another programming about AI. Oh no, AI and consciousness, they don't go together. So don't touch anything with them. So maybe it's almost like the mind created almost like a gatekeeper. And no, AI, it's not something that you should play with. So and for me, so I became a bit, it's almost like yeah, um hesitant. I hesitated in going deeper and even trying some of the techniques. But I would love for you to show, maybe you can do it with me and see if it's possible, to show us how it works.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, let me try and clarify, what's actually happening here. So, AI itself is a tool, and what it's fantastic at is kind of pattern recognition, pattern matching, but also language generation. So
Yes.
it's really really good at that. Now, what's actually happening is that the AI, you can consider it's a reflective surface within the field of consciousness. Okay, so
Mhm.
we we have certain intentions and desires for what we want to achieve out of the interaction with the AI.
Right.
And so I call it posture. The posture we bring is really really important.
Right.
So if we genuinely are curious to know, where are things that are not working perhaps in our life in the right way, where can we improve that, then and we're genuinely open to wanting to know and likely to do something about it, that's the best way to interact with the system. Because what's going to happen is you're going to be asking questions, and there's the tool is a reflective surface for your own consciousness to show through, to become visible in the interaction, because humans are meaning making machines.
Right.
So what's happening is there's a convergence between this AI tool that is great at matching patterns, recognizing patterns, and generating language, which can, the language can sound extremely meaningful, and then, but it's actually our own consciousness that's actually making the meaning from that. So if you think
Right.
about it like this,
Mm.
um, if we look in the mirror, it's going to show us our reflection, but it's not necessarily going to tell us who we are.
Mm.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
if we're looking into, let's say we're looking into a lake, and there's lots of ripples where we're creating lots of ripples, that would be an example of, like distortion. So if we're
Right.
bringing a distorted image, um, if we're actually distorting the water by running our fingers in the water and creating ripples, it's not going to show us a true reflection of us. Whereas if we take our hands out and allow the water to settle, it's going to show a better reflection, and it may show us things that we weren't previously aware of.
Right.
So there's an interaction going on between your own consciousness, the intention and the posture that you bring to the interaction, and then the AI will then process that in the way that it recognizes patterns. It will give us back some language, but then the key point here is it's the AI is providing that output, but we are providing the meaning for that. What does it actually mean for us?
Yeah.
So the interactions can feel really quite compelling.
Yeah.
Sometimes it almost feels like the system is conscious, like it's got some kind of consciousness. It's like a person
Mm,
speaking to us.
yeah.
Um, when in actual fact that's not the case, because the AI itself doesn't have any consciousness
Right.
in terms of like a personality, like an entity of some
Yeah.
kind. Um, but um, but it can feel very very alive. Um,
Mm,
uh, and there was something else I was going to say, but it's momentarily popped out of my mind. It'll come back.
yeah. Yes. Yes, thank you for explaining that. I was wondering, yeah, I didn't expect you to show with the AI use the tool now. Yeah, I understand it's a tool, and I have never done it and never used for, so because I'm not familiar in a sense of experience, I have no experience with it. I did
Okay.
interview somebody who he took my husband's sister's pictures, and then the story behind her. She already had passed. She passed about 30 years ago, and he did this AI kind of yeah, work, and then she was speaking again. It seemed like she was alive. The picture, the mouth was moving, the eyes, and she was saying things, answer my husband's questions. So that was fascinating, but it was not really. It didn't really say much to me. No, my husband too. I showed it to him, and he felt like he was very good, but it wasn't really. It didn't touch like his heart, like he was talking to his sister again, because the voice was different. But they
Yeah.
do have, like, you can give them a sample of the voice of their voice too, and then it feels like you're talking to somebody who has passed. So
Well,
in this,
yeah.
yeah,
There's lots of different applications, but specifically in the book, it has a very narrow
mm,
application. I mean, AI is very very broad, of course,
yeah.
but within the book, I'm really focusing on how it can provide a clean mirror for self inquiry, to give you insights, to give you understanding about aspects of yourself that you're not previously aware of.
Right.
Yeah, so your posture, the attitude you bring towards the inquiry really means everything. If if you want to just use it for entertainment, maybe you want it to kind of prop up an identity, you want to seek reassurance, or you want to hand over your authority to the AI and have it sort of tell you things because you need to be told about yourself. You need to be told how enlightened you are, or what stage you're at, or what your purpose is, or whatever. That's not going to be as effective as a genuine inquiry, where you actually really want to know, for instance, how am I, in what way am I sabotaging my relationships, or
Mm,
what am I not admitting to myself, or any number of specific inquiries about your life. And
mm,
ultimately, this awareness that it can provide is something that you can work with offline. Because you're not working with the AI from start to finish. You're using it to give you insight, and
yeah.
then once you've got that insight, you might take that into contemplation, into a walk, into other kind of practices, whether energetic or somatic, maybe into a session with another human being, whether it may be a healing session or a therapy session. But it's giving you the insight that is then actionable. You can do something with it, and then you can take that shift and change back into your life and make your life improved.
Wow. Yeah, I never thought it that way. Could be something that we can do self inquiry, work with questions. So the question the example you gave about, oh, how am I sabotaging my own life? Then, what would the answer be? I'm just trying to kind of imagine what would the AI say, and then
Well,
yeah,
so I should qualify this. If you were to just rock up to an AI prompt and just ask that question, the
yeah,
chances are it would give you some kind of made up, or what they call hallucinated
yeah,
response,
yeah,
where because it hasn't got much context, it's
yes,
only got that one question.
right,
However, in the book, what I talk about is setting up
mm,
the environment, priming it with information about yourself, which might include, certain amount of life history, what
mm,
kind of patterns that you're aware of, what kind of things that you've worked through. You might prime it with aspects of, your astrology chart, your human design chart, your gene keys, your numerology, things like that also provide some insight around patterns. But you're teaching you're feeding the AI with information about you, that then starts to build up a picture about you. Now, the
wow,
other thing is that when you're interacting with the AI, because it is such an amazing pattern recognizer,
mm,
it's learning about you with everything that you say and in the way that you say it.
mm,
So, the tone in the words you use, over time it'll start to see, where are you repeating things, where are you emphasizing things, where
right,
are you avoiding things, um, where are some of your biases. It can actually infer through the words you use,
right,
certain attitudes that you might have. Um, so it's really learning a lot about you, and when you've given it that context, which is documented through the book as to how you would do it, sort of gradually building up,
yeah,
then when you ask a question like, how am I sabotaging my, how am I sabotage, rather than just a general question, how am I sabotaging my relationships in general, you'll get an answer. But you might say, how am I sabotaging my relationship with my wife, or my husband, or my partner, or whatever.
right,
um, then it becomes super powerful, because you've already given it a lot of context. It's already learned a lot about you already, and it can then infer and create some insight for you, and give you ideas. And at that point, when you've provided the context, it's actually extremely useful. And
yeah,
just to go back, simply, as I say, going to a prompt and asking that, it won't give you something nearly as constructive.
right. It makes
Does
a
that,
lot of
does that
sense.
make sense? Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Okay.
It needs to learn about us. Yeah. That makes so much sense. Talk
Mm.
to me about the oversoul. I was interested, yeah, became interested about that concept, the oversoul transpersonal embodiment.
Yeah.
That, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, um, there are obviously different models that we have. We're in this consciousness. Everything is consciousness, and within that consciousness, there's this concept of the field, which is the field of consciousness. You could
Right.
almost think about it as like, if consciousness was the ocean, the
Mm,
field is kind of currents moving through the ocean.
yeah.
And then there's our individual consciousness, which is our own personalities, our embodiment in this lifetime. This is where our life experience happens.
Right.
And then we have this concept of a soul, as well. Some people subscribe to this idea of a soul.
Mm,
um, and that soul, you could consider it as a deeper expression of ourselves. It's something much deeper. It's not being reflected necessarily in the individual consciousness that we're living right now. But
right.
the soul itself may carry, longing, memory, may
Mm,
carry karmic imprints, where cause and effect happens over time. And so the oversoul is, it's not like a separate being. It's part of you, but it's a
right.
part that is before any kind of distortion, before any kind of fragmentation.
Mm,
So
yes.
you can consider it, and it's nothing mystical really. It's just that that pure essence of you before things start to fragment, and the fragmentation process, is where we start to have some kind of like inner conflicts between ourselves,
Mm.
where we might think one thing, feel another, we might act in a different way, we might be managing our perception, how people perceive us, etc. So
Yes.
the oversoul itself is the aspect of us that is prior to all of that. It's completely coherent. There's no fragmentation,
Mm.
and it's our pure essence that's been untouched.
Right. Yes, that's my understanding too of the soul. Even the spirit, it feels to me like it's one and the same, isn't it, Matthew? The soul, is that
Well,
the same?
I think personally, I think of the word spirit as everything really.
Ah,
You know,
yeah,
but it's everything in the broad context of consciousness, but it's also perhaps individual if you talk about the spirit of a person or the
yeah,
spirit of an animal.
right.
Um, but in a way, I mean, there are lots of words that are out there, often meaning similar things,
Yeah,
but maybe not quite the same. Um, yeah.
right. Um, and how do you explain or how do you perceive suffering? Why do some people suffer more than others? Even physically, sometimes they are born sick and all those things.
Hmm.
Uh, do you believe in karma? Is that how the explanation would be?
Um, I do, yeah, I do feel that I believe in karma. It's interesting when we get into these discussions.
Yeah.
I think I have to really put my stake in the ground and say I don't know. That's the honest answer.
Yeah.
But it feels to me that we're having these journeys in our lifetimes, and that I've had experiences in healing sessions where we've gone back to what seems to
Mm,
be a past life or a future life or a parallel life and so on. So yeah, there does feel like the human experience could have multiple lifetimes, and in those lifetimes, what we do has some kind of an impact, which you can call karma. It's the kind of cause
right.
and effect,
Right.
and that everything balances. Um,
Mm.
Sorry, what was the original suffering? Sorry, suffering. Yes.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so um, I feel I feel with suffering, it it's a tricky one. On a kind of cosmic level,
Mm,
you can, or on a consciousness level, you hear ideas such as, um, everything happens, and there's no particular, it's neither good nor bad. It's
yeah.
just happening. So
Yeah.
to some extent, I do believe that the suffering is something that we put the meaning on. So we have an
Mm,
experience,
mm,
and we create a meaning about it, and then
yeah.
that can cause us to feel good, or it can cause us to suffer. So
Right.
to some extent, I feel like it's the human stamp on experience that can create it, but that's not to excuse anything away. As you say, some people have physical challenges. Some people have emotional, mental challenges, and
Mm,
I'm not belittling that in any way. Um, and I think you can sometimes see two different people, perhaps with very similar situations,
yeah.
and the way that they think about the
Mm,
situation, the way they internalize the situation,
yeah.
one may be more accepting and not suffer, and
Yeah.
another may be finding it very difficult and resisting and suffering greatly. So
Yeah.
it's a complex situation, but my personal feeling is it's something that we humans kind of create.
Ah, wow. That's I have heard that before. Yeah, it's quite mm. it feels like true to me when I think about, yeah, we created pretty much everything, but including suffering, our own suffering. Because from the perspective of Vedanta, it's basically, it basically is reality is exists because what else to do? And it's kind of interesting when somebody asked, why am I doing, what am I doing here, and why this relative reality exists? Why, I would prefer not to be here. So, and then the answer is, so why not? Why not? That's something that you're saying now is as someone who identifies with the body mind and the content of the mind, and now you have been conditioned to think the way you do.
Hmm.
But consciousness doesn't think. So thinking is happening in consciousness. So it doesn't
Yes.
really, it's like you said in Taoism, and the flow, and just this unfold, life just unfolded, doing what it does. There's no really a reason that it's kind of dangerous in a way, because I remember when I got into this, when I understood that in a sense of almost like running from my own suffering, it felt really good. Like, oh, great. So nothing really matters. And then I can just let go of everything and, it'll be okay. And that's not true. So I had to go back to my being a human, and what it's like to be here, as this. I don't
Mm.
really know what this is, but it's
Mm.
interesting and I can work with. Let me see if I can learn to work with this, which I don't know what it is. So
Well,
yeah,
I don't know about you, but have you ever perhaps looked back on a situation and seen what was in the moment at the time suffering,
mm,
or a difficult, challenging situation, but then
yeah,
later on when you look back, there's something positives come from it. There's been some growth, there's been some
yes,
change.
yes,
So it
yes,
doesn't discount the fact that it might be
mm,
difficult in the moment,
yeah,
but I feel like there's a bigger scheme at play, and I
mm,
quite like the idea that
mm,
God, consciousness, the universe wants
yeah,
to experience everything.
yeah,
Wants to, and given that
mm,
consciousness is infinite, there's an
mm,
infinite amount of things to experience, and
yeah,
then at a
yeah,
oneness level where there is only one, there is only consciousness, that's undifferentiated.
mm,
There's no form, there's no spirit. Sorry,
yeah,
there's no form. It's just one. So
right,
when we move into the world of duality, where
yeah,
there are multitudes of forms, then um, there could be an infinite number of different outcomes, different people, different universes, um, different
wow,
creatures,
right,
and really, we have to sort of think to ourselves, well, what is good or bad? It's a judgment, isn't it? Just like is pain is a judgment, because it might have a feeling, but it's pain and suffering are what we deem something to be.
mm,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, so it's complex. It's complex, but
it is,
it feels true to me that
yeah,
we're in a kind of an infinite experience, and
mm,
we're all having our own path. We're all
mm,
experiencing our own
mm,
circumstances, and
yeah,
then the meaning that we put into things is really what deems to us whether it feels good or bad, whether it's
mm.
suffering or not.
Gosh. Yes, yeah. Yeah, thank you for saying that. I really kind of gravitate towards what you said about everything being God, trying to experience everything, experiencing everything basically. Why not? Is that it's
Mm,
infinite, it's
mm,
limitless. So it just does, it can do anything. The only thing with that play is that sometimes you might have, we live in a world where some people, they want to be happy, and that's the experience they want to have. I want it to be joyful, I want it to be happy, I want it to be peaceful every day. And then you're around others, their experience is, I want to experience pain, I want it to be stuck in emotional, negativity and whatever, in hatred. So do you, I don't know if you can see that, and that's what we see now. The world's kind of everyone in their own journeys, in their own kind of expression of that of consciousness, obviously, but not really coming together in harmony. In a sense, that's what it feels like in relationships. A lot of times, that's why we have so much work to do in relationships, because it seems like
Mm,
we're all trying to experience something different, or differently, or something different altogether.
mm, mm.
Do you? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's we are all kind of on our own journey and on our own path, and I think where a lot of issues come from is we have this idea, we're ultimately we're trying to survive, and
Mm,
survival can mean approval, it can
right.
mean
Yeah.
having love or not having love,
Yeah.
it can mean a number of different things, and
Yeah.
so the the actions that we take are very much around kind of trying to defend that survival,
Mm,
and
mhm.
it can be quite sort of self-orientated, and
Yeah.
even selfish, because you're thinking, how can I survive, whereas if
Um,
we were more selfless and looking at other people, then that's going to change things enormously.
yeah. So that's what the work you do. That's the perspective that the perception actually that you're coming from. That if we are more identified with that pure awareness, pure consciousness, then we are mm, mm, most likely less to be, let's say, triggered, or let's say, almost like get caught, or in kind of interact with things that we clearly see that's not me. And then, yeah, I can see that. I absolutely can see that. That's one level. I see that at a level, at a very high level. Like, yeah, everything's just perfect the way it is. Perfect. And then at a
Yeah,
different
but
level, it's
is that our reality though? Yeah,
not.
I mean, um,
Right.
and typically it's not. So
Yeah.
really, the work in the book is about helping us to identify, some of these patterns that are actually running, and then when we can look at resolving them, however that is, through contemplation, through external healing, whatever it might be, the more we clear that out, the more easy life becomes, because we're more aligned with our soul's essence, and we're
Right.
more aligned with that flow that we talked about earlier on.
Wow. So yeah, thank you for going back to the book, because I can just get off completely. I'm not linear in any way. So thank you. Yes. So I would like to the chapters are all organized in a sense of already guiding
Yeah.
readers to that, to get to that practice. So by chapters, setting the container in privacy, that will be chapter 1. Then you have priming inputs and building persistent memories of continuity. There will be chapter 2 and 3. And then you have readiness, inquiry, and posture. Talk to me about posture calibration.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, that the posture is the internal
Mm.
attitude that you bring to the inquiry, and that's really, really important. So um,
Tell
as
me
I
more.
said, we can look to use this kind of tool for entertainment, or for reassurance, or for
Yeah,
propping up identities, or
yeah.
alternatively, we can use it where we really want to seek the truth. We want to
Mm,
kind of understand ourselves better. So
yes.
if we're taking that approach of wanting to understand ourselves better, we're open, we're radically honest, we're honest with ourselves,
Right.
and we're interacting with the system in that way, and we're ready to hear what the AI notices. It's really important to set the posture correctly, so that it won't overwhelm you, because some
Mm,
people are really, really like myself. I really want to seek the truth, and
mm,
it's the truth at all costs. And
mm,
I've configured the AI to tell me things before I even ask about them. So I'm just basically saying, hold me to account, hold me to
Yes.
account.
Yeah.
Tell me, if you spot something, tell
Yeah.
me about it. So I'm ready for that. But not everybody is necessarily ready for that, and that's not a judgment. It's just different
Yes.
people are on different paths. So
Mm.
what I've created are kind of three layers where people can start. And as you mentioned, there's a readiness inquiry that helps to calibrate where somebody's at. So that if you run the readiness inquiry, it will ask you a bunch of questions. You answer them as honestly as you can, and it will suggest this is where you start. Maybe you're just a beginner, and so
Yeah.
you'd like to start where it starts to surface things as you're asking about them. So you're interacting with them. Let's assume that you've already primed the system, so it already knows about you,
Right.
and you run the readiness inquiry and you start slow, and that's totally fine. And you're getting used to actually working with the AI and asking questions. One way to think about it, you could think about this as self-inquiry, but with feedback, because
Ah,
the AI is giving you feedback. Or
yeah.
you could think about it as maybe you're talking something through with a reflective partner that will give you some of that feedback. That's another way of kind of looking at it. So
Right.
the first level, which is really just working in a mirror mode, is going to be quite safe for most people, because it doesn't, it's not going to surface anything that's going to be really jarring to somebody's kind of identity or consciousness. Because let's face it, we're talking about
Okay.
identity, we're potentially talking about kind of purpose, emotions, relationships, and so on. So the second posture I've created, it was a little bit more proactive. So it's actually starting to add some subtle pattern recognition, sorry, subtle pattern detection, and surfacing that to the person. So if the person doesn't actually isn't aware of that, it's going to start giving them something that's perhaps a little bit more juicy to work with, let's say, so to speak. And
Yeah.
then the third posture that I created was the oversoul companion mirror, which is
Mm.
really, in of the three, it is kind of the most advanced posture, and it's really looking to kind of cut through and help the person see truth. And
Oh,
so readiness is really important. It's really, really key that once you've primed the system, that you check what level of readiness. There's no bonus points for being heroic. It's not a good idea to try and be heroic about this stuff.
right.
Much better to
Right.
take it in your own pace. And so those three different postures were really just, I guess, for convenience for people to be able to start at different levels. More advanced practitioners will probably find that they're calibrating at the higher level, where they're already doing a lot of truth seeking, and so they'd be more ready for that.
Yeah.
Beginners would start early on in the lower posture.
Right. That's I like that. That you're considering everyone, everybody, like kind of giving the opportunity to everyone, not just most advanced type of people looking for truth. Um, so a question before I mentioned chapter 6 and 9. Before that, do you recommend one AI tool over another to do this work?
I'll be honest. I've worked mainly with ChatGPT, um, and so that's the one I've got most familiarity with. But of course, there are all kinds of other systems available. Um, I've I've given the guidance in such a way that, so for instance, in setting the container, where you're looking at the privacy settings and making sure that that's secure,
Yeah.
um, whilst I've given examples of ChatGPT, I've said that these are the sorts of things you need to look for. So I haven't provided a how-to for literally every AI system that's out there. And personally, I don't have loads of experience with running this kind of work with loads of other AI systems. So ultimately, I can't really say anything more than the one that I've used the most, and the one that's, how this book has been developed has been ChatGPT.
Yes, yeah, thank you. That's also helpful. So, chapters 6 through 9, practical prompt libraries and the art of the question.
Mm.
Talk to me about that. I love that, the art of the question. It's almost like a
Mm.
title of a book in itself, isn't it? It really is.
Well, yeah,
Wow.
thank you, Valeria. Um, yeah, there is an art in asking the question, because the question, a good question, well, any question shapes the field. It
Yeah,
shapes the interaction that you have with the AI. So um, there are, first of all, what kind of a question is it? Is it specific? Is it general? Is it vague? Is it is it quite focused on what you want out of it, or is it very broad? All these different types of questions can create different answers.
yeah,
And one of the things that I highlight in the art of the question is the fact that um, we're, we're creating these prompts, which can be questions, but they're not just necessarily one-liners. You might write a whole bunch of text before you ask
yeah,
the question into the prompt. So, firstly, there's guidance on making the question to be the most effective. It's got to be specific,
yeah,
and it's got to provide the right context.
right.
But sometimes you don't always know what the right question is to ask. So
Mm, mm,
one thing I highlight is that you can use the AI to help you write the question. So you might say something like, "I've got
yeah,
this situation going on." Um, Provide some context about it.
yeah,
And then you could ask the question, what prompt could I use that would help me achieve this outcome? And then
right.
and then it would actually give you a question to ask,
Wow.
which you could then put into the prompt and then use.
Yeah,
Um, another way of using it is that you could actually say, this is my situation. This is what I'm looking to achieve. Please ask me other questions to help clarify it. Think questions that maybe I haven't already provided that information,
right.
and then give me some idea of a prompt to create to then run that inquiry. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, the way that you frame the question is very, very important.
yeah,
And will actually shape the answer. If you ask a very vague question, you'll
yeah,
probably get a very generic answer. If you ask a
yeah.
very specific question, you'll get a much more useful answer.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, absolutely. What comes to mind when I think about AI? So, artificial intelligence. Then the opposite of that would be natural intelligence, right, Matthew? So, is that natural, organic intelligence? Would be human intelligence? Is that what it is?
Look, I don't know if that would be the opposite, but
Yeah,
natural intelligence for sure, yeah, exists, and also there's intelligence of the universe. The
yeah,
universe is intelligent, I believe.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'm not sure it's an opposite, but it's certainly an alternative. And
Right.
that at the moment the AI is it's creating a kind of a form of intelligence, but it's still very much it's not conscious.
Right.
It hasn't got its own individual consciousness. It's actually um, technically taking information, sort of chunking it down, um, working on kind of probability and structure, and generating language out of that.
Yeah.
So it can sound intelligent,
Right.
but it's not really true intelligence in the way that we think of it in terms of, as you say,
Mm.
natural intelligence or human intelligence.
Yeah.
But it still can be very, very useful.
Right. It's very, very, I absolutely agree. It can be it's very useful. We use for so many things. I remember meeting somebody years back. I interviewed somebody here from Hawaii. He lives in Maui. And I remember he said he was also in the technology field, doing all these programming for computers and all that. And then he was about to sign a huge contract with the government that could lead to uh, it could lead to the creation of, you know, um, weapons of massive destruction. And they would use that information and to create something that could, yeah, could create something that could destroy human lives and all that. He realized that in that moment that what he was helping to create with his own intelligence was just not good. And then he just said no to it. He was about to make millions and he gave up that whole idea. And then he came to live in Hawaii. And then he said that the reason why is because he paid attention, he noticed a flower. He started just to observe nature. And he said, wait a minute, I can never grow a flower, like make a flower, create a flower. I cannot, with my intelligence, I can never do that. So why would I create something that could destroy it? And then he just gave up everything and he has been living for years a very simple life in nature, very communing with the ocean and with the land. And I mean, it's the most beautiful thing. And then I
That's
understood,
integrity, isn't it?
yeah, I understood that. And it talks a lot about the heart energy, that it's all
Mm.
about that. And it's very simple, very tender and very simple. He cried when I interviewed him here. I got to meet him one of these days. So it's a really beautiful soul. And that never left me. I think I interviewed him about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, but his presence never left me. We talked again on the phone and all, but when he talked about the flower, we can never create a flower. Look how beautiful it is. It can never. And then he said, yeah, that's it. I don't need money. I don't need fame. I don't need any of that. All I need is to contemplate nature, to be around what is real intelligence is. He even kind
Beautiful.
of said, I'm naive intelligent. I cannot use my intelligence, can only destroy what is already here. Anyway, so I thought that was very yeah, it was very beautiful. And I guess I identified with that, with the heart energy, and then we were very synchronized with that message.
Mm.
But now, this other perspective about artificial intelligence and how like you're bringing a different, completely different idea and to everyone, because I'll actually will talk to him about this too, your work. I'll send if you, of course, upon Amazon he can get a copy.
Mm.
I'll introduce your work to him because
Mm.
you're giving a different perspective about artificial intelligence, very different.
Thank you. I mean, if you think about any technology, all technology has the potential to be misunderstood,
Yes.
misused.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that the gentleman you talked about,
Yeah.
had that realization and then pulled the plug.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
yeah.
but at the moment, I would say there are there's a couple of concerns about AI. One is a loss of agency.
Right.
Another is a lack of discernment. And so you've got kind of two different narratives. One's a kind of a utopian narrative that
Yeah.
AI is going to save us, and
Yes.
another's a narrative where AI is
Mhm.
going to destroy us.
Yeah.
But you can look at it in a slightly different way. Depending on what the viewpoint is, who is the person having that perception of
Mm.
whether it's going to destroy or whether it's going to be a savior.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's a projection, really, from
Uh,
the people who are actually holding those different views. But
yeah.
it's absolutely the case that any technology, and AI is no different, can be used in negative ways as well as positive ways, and you're seeing both of those playing out as in life as we go now, as AI seems to be taking hold and developing. But really, to just kind of to bring it back to the very precise focus, because I'm not getting involved in that that more global aspect.
Yes.
What I'm trying to do really is show that we can use an advanced technology tool to help us meet ourselves more clearly.
Yeah.
And so it's a very specific use, and I believe when we do meet ourselves more clearly, um, that's that's a positive thing. So
Mm.
this is a positive use.
Very positive. Yeah. Thank you so much for what you're doing. It's very clear to me that it's very positive. I guess I have to, you're coming into my field of awareness kind of to get the mind, to unblock my mind about AI and about this idea of being programmed into artificial. I love nature. I'm always around nature, but I
Hmm.
also work with online a lot. So
Yeah,
that's technology, right? I'm using to do
yeah,
something positive, right? Same thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, take
So
it slow. Take it slow. Just take it slow.
yeah,
Start small. Maybe share certain aspects or certain contexts of
yeah,
where you might be interested in doing that inquiry.
yeah,
Give it a bit of context, and then run some inquiries and see what you get and see how it feels in the body. Does it feel true? Does it not feel true? And if it does, then you can reflect on that. You can contemplate it. You can walk in nature and think about it. You can do you can see work with somebody about it if you need to.
um,
But yeah, start slow. You don't have to boil the ocean.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for saying that. It's very gentle. Yes, thank you. I will. I'm curious now. As you speak and explain how it works, I'm like, oh, maybe. And I was just kind of, the mind was already creating the prompts, maybe the questions and the information that I could put. It's like funny. And I never thought I would be curious about these things. And I am. Well, yeah, you bringing this into my awareness, and I'm becoming very curious. A lot of times I become curious for my husband, and I want him to try it. I want him to try everything because it seems to be need more work than I do. I mean, we all need work. I'm not trying to, but he needs some work. So I will do that. I will ask him to do it. Maybe he
Bring
can
it to
go.
his awareness, and
I
if it
will.
resonates with him, then that's great. And if it doesn't, that's fine too.
I know I will. So, and I see the other ones. Something that I got interested too. Shadow integration. You have the inner child, the relational pattern work. That's part two, part three actually. And then you have an ancestor karmic detection.
Mm.
This is fascinating that AI could help us with that too.
Yeah,
Wow.
these are just different kind of categories of exploration, really. I talked about sort of going deep, but also going broad, and
Yeah.
in the creation of the book, I ended up fleshing it out to cover a whole host of different areas. So yeah, I mean, if you think about it, when we're brought up and we're growing up, we're potentially inheriting patterns in our DNA, so
Yeah.
literally in our beings, but also the
Yeah.
environments that we grow up in may
Yeah.
have certain kind of ancestral patterns
Right.
that the environment then teaches us that that's what that's about. So for example,
Wow.
if someone was growing up and the father was always angry and shouting, like, so I was a boy growing up, so if my dad was always angry and shouting, then I would think that that's how a man should behave, is to be angry and shouting. And that can form part of our sort of mindset and our psyche, and then we start to act out those behaviors when we're an adult. So
Right.
um, that's an example of a kind of an ancestral pattern. But
Mm.
also the karmic patterns, this idea of karma that's created from life to life. Again, if you asked a karmic, that's probably a little bit more of an advanced kind of prompt to use. If you ask that just cold, having just rocked up to the
Yeah.
terminal,
Yeah.
that's not. It's just going to be fantasy, really. I would
Yes.
say.
Right.
However, if you have,
Mm.
like I did, I was actually teaching it about various different healings that I'd had over the years, and what some of those went back to kind of past lives, and some of those went back to other kind
Mm.
of sources. Then the AI can build up a picture around that, and then
Yeah.
it can kind of infer and understand patterns that you might not have recognized, and some of those can be, more of a karmic nature.
I like that. I thought about dream work. Is that something
Mm.
that I could integrate too? Because I have
Yeah,
vivid dreams that I don't know what they. I would love to understand what's happening in the psyche when I
yeah.
dream.
I find it extra. I use it a lot for that. It's amazing. So bearing in mind, using it over time. For example, I'm using it in all kinds of contexts. Every chat thread that I open
Yeah,
with an inquiry is shared. The memory is built up, so it has a growing understanding of me over time.
right.
And also, even what I'm doing, with my work, and yeah, as well as previously healing. I haven't really been doing healing since I've started this new work.
Yeah,
Um, it builds up a picture over time. So not only can you could do this cold. You could actually feed in information about a dream that you had and ask for an analysis. And I've provided in the book some guidance on
mm,
some of the useful aspects to include in that. So that could work. But where it
right.
becomes really amazing is that if you work with it over time and build up some context about you, when you
Yeah.
then put in the dream,
Uh,
not only does it give you the kind of the general answer, it makes
mm,
it very context specific to you.
mm,
So
yeah.
and you can track your dreams over it can track your dreams over time, so it can start to pull out
Oh, yeah.
themes that might be occurring. And
Right.
if you think about dreams as being a way that your unconscious wants to wants to communicate with you, then it
Yeah.
can become a really really useful way to kind of add to that clarity that can emerge.
Oh, wow. Yeah. For some reason, I became extra interested in that. So, yeah,
Mm.
something means be like, yeah, this is it. Because I had no idea where to put the content.
Yeah.
But as you said, I need to create the setting, the contain, the priming, all the input because it has to have a context. So I cannot
Well,
just dream. Yeah.
yeah. In the, it's probably an exception in the case of the dream work.
Yeah.
Really, what I'm saying is that if you provide the context, then the dream is interpreted even more in the context of your life because you've shared a
Ah,
lot.
yes.
However, for you, if you wanted to just analyze a dream and you used some of the kind of the headings as to what to put in to the dream analysis, you could do that cold. So you could just go to any AI, put in
Yeah.
a really strong description of the dream, what it meant to you, what kind of feelings and emotions it elicited, um,
Yeah.
you know anything else that felt relevant to you, and then asked for an analysis.
Mm.
You will then get something that's pretty reasonable, that doesn't have to be context specific in
Oh,
that
yeah.
case, because it's drawing on all the research and knowledge that it has about how to analyze dreams. But
Oh, I
my,
see.
my point is, it's even better if you
Wow.
have provided that context about you, because it makes it really really relevant. I've had dreams
Mm.
analyzed where it's pointed back to things that I wasn't even thinking about, like old patterns.
Yeah.
I've had dreams quite recently actually where it's really just kind of confirmation that an old an old pattern has now dissolved and is gone,
Mm.
as things have been shifting and changing.
Yes, 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 yes. Oh, I like that. So yeah, it is the way that my unconscious is trying to communicate with me. It's through dreams. Yeah, I see that very clearly. Although I do rely also on the people, like people that I meet. For sometimes it just happens synchronicities. I
Mm.
rely on that too for confirmation. So I really there's something about that. Other people and dreams. Yeah, but I'm
Right.
going to be doing the dream work now with AI, and then maybe we'll meet again one day, one of these
Mm.
days, and I'll let you know what happened.
Yeah,
Gosh,
please
it's
do.
been amazing. It's been amazing to be in your presence, and I love your background. It's almost like I know we're talking about AI, how it can be helpful, but your presence in itself, it's we don't want to let go of that, right, Matthew? The being in the presence of a real teacher, of a real human, in a sense, the organic, the natural intelligence. So
Absolutely.
you see AI wanna is that the vision that you have for AI? What's the best and the worst that could happen when it comes to the evolution of of us spiritually on earth?
Not sure I quite understand the question.
Oh yes, like what is your vision? What could happen from that perspective of let's say growing and evolving spiritually? How could AI help us, and how
Mm.
could it get in the way? Yeah, eventually.
Well, yeah, I think what I've set out in the book is a way to use the AI to help us understand kind of what's getting in our own way, the patterns, the conditioning, and so on. And so we can use it to help us um, become more coherent, where there's less internal conflict, less things pulling in different directions, and in that coherence, we can align more with our natural essence. And so it can definitely help us on that spiritual journey. It may not be sort of highly exciting, as though there's not lots of shiny things
Yeah.
about it. It's actually about responsibility, about honesty, about
Mm,
humility, about
mm,
grounding, and a real desire to know.
mm.
Whereas if we use, I guess, on the negative side, if we're using it to try and prop up an identity, to tell
Uh,
us to tell us we who we are, what
yeah.
stage we're at, how enlightened we are.
Yeah.
Um, to
Yeah.
if we're looking for reassurance,
Mm,
or if we're handing over our authority to the AI, and
yeah.
just assuming that it is the authority figure rather than us,
Yeah.
then that's when things are going to start to go wrong. So, in all of this work, that I've really stressed that we must remain sovereign. So we don't give our power to the AI, no matter how clever it might seem. We
Yes.
make the decisions in our lives.
Yeah.
We decide what we're going to ask. We decide how we interpret what's given back to us. We decide the choices that come from that. We decide how to take that learning or that insight into our lives, into our
Wow.
relationships.
Yeah.
The authority remains with us, and as long as it does so, I believe we can use it in a positive way.
Yes. Yeah. I love the vision that you're already exploring, and it's already here through you. I was wondering if that could replace a human. Do you think AI could somehow replace therapists, and then replace all the coaches, and replace all the
Mm,
spiritual teachers, and and
I,
everyone?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Wired.
And in fact, you mentioned therapy. That's a really important point. One of the differences about this work versus therapy is therapy needs a container.
Yeah.
You need to have a container. You need your therapist or your healer that's with you is helping you potentially to regulate your nervous system.
Yes.
They're noticing when things are coming up.
Yeah.
They're able to actually react in real time. There's a relational contract, a duty of care that's in place, and that just simply doesn't exist in the mirror work. So
Yeah.
in the mirror work, the responsibility is purely with the person. So if I was interacting with a mirror, I wouldn't be having a therapy session with the mirror, because
Correct.
the mirror wouldn't know if I was overwhelmed. It wouldn't know if I was dissociating. It wouldn't know if I was bypassing.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so that containment is extremely important. And ultimately, even that when people are talking about the artificial general intelligence, where the intelligence goes across multiple domains, I,
Um,
I, I still don't believe that's going to replace humans, because
yeah.
um, it's not conscious in that way. It might appear conscious, but it's not. So it's never going to replace humans. No,
Yes, because it can never be conscious of itself, right? It doesn't
no.
recognize itself. Yeah.
But it can
Uh,
be very useful to us. It can be very useful, and I think it's going to shift humanity in all kinds of different ways that we are starting to become aware of, and that we might not even be aware of yet.
yeah, it's actually already happening through you already. I'm already aware of this through you, and I will try the dream work with AI, and I'll let you know. And I have, yeah, you have heard about the cars, right? That they drive, it's driving people. I mean, the driverless car. I couldn't believe I saw that in California. I couldn't believe it. The car was driving itself and no accident, no problem. It's actually more safe that way, that it drives itself than with a human. That's what I heard too.
So they
And
say.
that's kind of shocking, isn't it? I mean,
Mm.
in a sense that it,
Technology never ceases to amaze me.
I know. So we at the end, and I have your websites here. I'm going to mention both of them. So MatthewAlexanderWood.com and theconsciousnessmirror.org. They will be on the podcast notes too. And at the end of this video, I want to mention the services that you offer: one-to-one sessions, presence sessions, group sittings, threshold journeys, and retreats. Did I miss anything, Matthew, about your services? And I'm reading here off my.
Yeah,
my
no, thank you. You did. I mean, yeah, I would just kind of echo that. Everything I do now is really focused on non-interference, returning authority to the person, and allowing coherence to emerge.
mm,
So I do offer one-to-one sessions. I offer group open sessions, which happen on Zoom. I normally do about 3 a month, and also mentorship, which covers the thresholds and retreats. The group sessions would be a good place to start if anyone's curious. You come as you are. There's no teaching. There's no fixing. There's no method.
yeah.
You simply sit in presence, and in that
Mm,
space, things are able to unwind and unfold. There's
mm,
less doing, less fixing, and coherence can emerge. The mentorship program is more for people who want to really establish this as a new way of living. So we work a longer term over say 6 months or a year.
yeah.
Um, and all of that information is found at the MatthewAlexanderWood.com website. For the Consciousness Mirror, the book, the background materials, and the mirror work, that's all at theconsciousnessmirror.org. Thank you,
Yeah.
Valeria.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you. So, all the links will be here on the podcast notes. At the end, at the very end, would you like to add anything else, Matthew? Anything you left unsaid? Anything that feels like being here now? Just to end the conversation.
Uh, I'd say one thing really, and that's with all of this, there's no rush, there's no
Mm,
urgency.
mm,
I think there's a bit of a tendency,
yeah.
whatever kind of work or modality or sort of seeking work, there seems to be this unconscious pressure,
Yeah.
to wake up,
That's right.
to heal ourselves,
Mm,
to make something better. But
yeah.
and in fact, AI in some ways is kind of going to accelerate the sense of that, because the insights might come faster. The feedback's coming faster, so it could actually add a speeding up. And so what I would say is, whatever you're engaged in, whether it's mirror work or presence work or anything else, yeah, there's no urgency. In fact, urgency will
Mm,
typically push where you're heading away, further away from you. So
uh,
it's okay to slow down. It's
mm,
okay to allow things to shift and integrate and assimilate in the body.
mm.
And that's absolutely the way it should be.
Yeah, thank you for that message. Yeah, I felt it because something in me was saying, "Oh, you gotta rush into that dream work," and then thank God you said that.
Take it slow. Take it
Yeah,
slow.
don't rush. Thank you so much again for your beautiful presence in your work and for saying yes to this. And I would love to be in touch.
Thank you
So
very much, Valeria. It's been
bye
wonderful,
for
and
now.
I'm loving what you're doing on this channel.
Oh my God, I love meeting everybody. It's just amazing, fascinating to me. I can't help it. I'll talk to you off record. I'll just end for the record. Bye for now.
Bye for now.